Well, I wanted to thank everyone for coming. My name is Trish Carrera. I'm the Director of Professional Development for the State Bar. Um, the, uh, the group that puts together the Pinnacle CLE for the State Bar, which is actually a department of the State Bar. I want to thank you all for being here, and I really appreciate your taking the time to come hear the presentation. Our thought was one of the things that we've been getting feedback on is what are some folks wanted some best practices ideas on CLE. And so we thought we'd share with you a framework today for putting together several parts of a CLE program for your section or group, primarily working on setting up a full plan for the year, so you have some guidance and a blueprint to work from, and then some specific tips with respect to the presentations themselves, and how to help your speakers, looking at course materials. We're also going to have Jacqueline here in a little while. She's the executive director of the BBE, and she's going to be talking about what's required for accreditation and approval of credit for programs, and give you some specific tips there. So by the end of this morning, you will have met everyone on the seminars team of the State Bar, as well as other key individuals that you would work with when you're putting together your CLE program, marketing folks, meeting planning folks, and the like. So please, this is intended to be an interactive program, so if you have specific questions along the way, don't hesitate to let us know, and we'll try and help you out as much as we can. Okay, so my presentation is about the big picture, setting and achieving CLE goals for your section. This isn't about the actual CLE program, it's about your CLE strategy for your section. And what Tim just handed out to you is a worksheet. And what I was hoping to do is have you take time during my presentation to actually fill this out for your section as best you can. And that way you can take it back to your section and get, solicit any feedback you need in order to complete this document. My hope is that this document will serve not only the purpose of giving you a sense of how everything is going to fit together for your CLE programs, but also help you with the transition from one year to the next. Because I think all of us know in July, August, it's like we're starting all over again with the transition in leadership at the sections. And so some things that someone else might know, they may not necessarily share with you because they're off, So by preparing a document that you can use as a transition document, hopefully you'll get the tips and insights from the person that handled CLE before you did, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Save everybody a lot of time. So let's talk about building a CLE plan. And maybe I can, let's go that way. There are 5 parts to the CLE plan I'm proposing for you. This doesn't mean, this is just a blueprint. If this plan doesn't work for you or your section, by all means modify it. But I thought these are at least the minimum key things that you should include in a plan document for yourself and for your section. So the 5 parts of the plan are establishing objectives. We're all familiar with that. Some new concepts that maybe you haven't been familiar with in the past in the work that you've done is doing a before action review and an after action review. And when we get to that part of this presentation, I'll explain why those are important. Then execution of the plan, and then planning for the future, planning for the transition. So let's take this apart a little bit. The first part of the worksheet talks about CLE objectives. And basically, when you're looking at CLE objectives, you're asking yourself, what do you want the CLE program to accomplish for your group? And there's lots of different motivations for that. And having collaborated with some of your sections throughout the last year, year and a half, we've become more familiar with a variety of reasons why a group might want to do CLE. There's a change in the law. So you want to make sure that your section members have the information that they need about that particular practice area and what might have changed. You want to make sure that your members feel like they're getting value for their membership. So you create CLE as an engagement strategy. A more fundamental thing is to make money for your section so that you can provide even more services on in different areas. Another alternative might be because you want to make sure that your members have a low-cost CLE option. Not all section programs are low cost, but many of them are. So by doing that, you're entering a piece of the market that only a section might uniquely be able to fill, a low-cost CLE option on your particular practice area. It's also, CLE might also be a means of creating leadership opportunities for your members. Being a CLE chair for your section is a leadership opportunity. You learn new skills, it's a professional development opportunity for your members. Or, it could be something as fundamental as, and if you're working on this worksheet, it might come up. Why do we do CLE? Are we just doing it because that's what we've always done? So we just keep doing it? Do we really have a good reason? So I'm going to give you a few minutes to think about what you want your group's CLE to accomplish. And be honest with yourself. If it's, making money so that you can fund other things, put it in there. If it's, gosh, we're doing it because we always have, put it in there. Whoever you're going to transition this document to needs to know the rationale for their effort in the coming year. Anybody want to share some thoughts about why you do CLE that I may not have covered?
I'm part of the PILS section, public interest law section, and we also do CLEs to attract new people to our section because we give a discount if they are members of the section and then they attend the CLE. We give them a discount. So we try to reach and grab other people who might be interested in the material for the CLE.
Absolutely.
And then they're more likely to stay on board next year as well.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so take a couple seconds and think about why. I see some people are writing still. Why does your group do CLE? My hope is by the time we're done this morning, you're going to have a bunch of really good documents to take back to your section and share with them. Okay. The next part of the, I have to keep doing it this way, sorry. Or not. The next part of your plan should make sure that you should make sure that you're aligning with your mission and starting broadly, align with the mission of the bar, which I've written out on the worksheet so you have it as a resource. You don't have to look it up anywhere. The mission of the State Bar is to improve the administration of justice and the delivery of legal services and to promote the professional interests of Wisconsin lawyers. So ask yourself, when you're doing this sync it up exercise, do your CLE objectives align with the mission of the bar? Do they support them somehow? And just by merely asking this question, you might find that there's a way to fine-tune your CLE program so that it better supports the mission of the bar. If your rationale doesn't sync up well with the mission of the bar, ask yourself, what can I do to modify it so that it does sync up better? Anybody think of any reason, reasons why your purpose for doing CLE might or might not sync up with the purpose of the bar as expressed in the mission?
Yeah, the intellectual property and technology law section is going to be engaging in a pro bono program starting this year. And one of the things that we're going to do is run a CLE where we educate the volunteers so they understand what's involved in providing pro bono services under the program. That seems to fit nicely with
Absolutely.
bar goals.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Another question that you should ask yourself when we have the, there's a strategic plan on wisbar.org, and the strategic plan for the bar is also being further developed and refined. So you can look at the current strategic plan that's on there, but in a short while, there will be a more improved strategic plan document for you to refer to, and that might also give you some ideas on how to make sure that your CLE is syncing up with the mission of the bar. But it should also sync up at a minimum with the strategic plan of the bar.
Comment over here.
Can you give an example of something that might not be considered? I don't know if that's come up recently, but something that doesn't sync up in a way that would raise some questions?
That's a good question. You know, I really, as long as it involves the practice of law, and even if it isn't accreditable, I would say it would sync up with the mission of the bar because it relates to improving the practice of law and the delivery of legal services. So long as that you can check the box that, you know, the word is competencies. The key word in and hopefully Jacqueline will talk about it when she gets here. The key word in accreditation world is, does this help improve the competencies of the attorneys practicing law in this state?
Yeah,
So
I spoke with Jacqueline this week, and she referenced that they do get from time to time people that want to submit yoga for lawyers.
oh yeah, that would be one.
That probably doesn't meet the mission.
Thank you.
Right here.
Thanks, I forgot about that one.
One thing, and I'm sorry Jackie's not yet here, is that we are considering develop a program where there's some Supreme Court rules that have been issued in the last couple of years that we believe violate some international practice action treaty obligations of the U.S., which, if changed, would permit foreign lawyers who are licensed under the General Agreement for Trade and Services to come into Wisconsin and practice law and or sit for the bar exam. So that might be a little bit of a counter argument, but it may even draw some people and some interest.
Yep. Okay, so you've looked at the mission, you've made sure it syncs up, you know, when the strategic plan is out there, I think I might have gone one too far, nope. And I know that all of the sections, I forgot to mention, I know all of the sections, oh, thank you, okay. I know all of the sections have strategic plans that you write for your group. Obviously, you want to check and make sure that your CLE program is going to support the strategic plan that you've written for your own group. All right, moving on. The last piece of CLE objectives is an analysis of your own group's strengths and weaknesses. In the business world, the term that's used for this analysis is SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We don't have to really go that far, but take a look at what you think your strengths are and build on those. That's what a SWOT analysis is about. So, do you have adequate resources? Yeah, we have a coffer of, you know, $10,000 in order to be able to support our CLE program. That's a strength. Do we have talent among our members of our section that can serve as faculty on a CLE program? That's a strength. Do we have the motivation? It takes a lot of work to put together a CLE program. Do we really, really want to spend our time doing this? Weaknesses. Maybe this is an opportunity to improve your group. Is it an opportunity to, maybe cohesion among the group is a problem. So you're going to embark upon a CLE plan in order to, get everybody on the same page within your own section. Another weakness might be membership. And this kind of ties back to the objectives that we talked about earlier. We want to get our members aren't engaged in our section. We want to get our members engaged. So, and let me explain to you how this ties to your specific strategy later on. Let's say engagement is an objective of yours, and you have, disparate points of view with respect to your particular practice area. When you create a CLE program to improve upon that weakness, everybody's collaborating, everybody's working together. Everyone that you invite to develop that program has an opportunity to talk with one another about different things. And having something to talk about that isn't that same issue that keeps popping up and creating discord among the group might be just what you need to help people, learn about each other a little bit more and improve that engagement and remove that stumbling block for your team. So even a weakness like cohesion, if you identify it in this way, is something that you can address through a CLE plan. Seems far-fetched, but it's possible. So why don't you take a minute and think about the strengths and weaknesses of your group and see if you can't put a couple down on your worksheet here. I think I'm going to go long.
Have you tried the mouse yet?
Okay, next we have potentially a new concept for some of us, and that is a before action review. That's something that we just started doing up in the professional development department recently as well, and I found it to be, and I believe those that have participated in the before action reviews have found it to be a helpful exercise. So in a before action review, you're asking yourself, what could go wrong? Let's say we decide we want to do CLE. Maybe this is the first time your section's ever done CLE. What could go wrong with your CLE plan? So identify the risks involved. We could lose our bucket of money. That's a huge potential risk. Maybe we'll find out that there's a reason for the lack of engagement by our membership. They don't care. Any other risks you can think of related to putting together a CLE plan for your group?
Yeah, I think sometimes there's people that have very diverse views on certain issues, perhaps in the area of law that the section's focused on. And if you took a CLE that took a particular point of view, one of the risks might be alienating a significant number of your members.
Yep, that's huge. We have run into that. Even the perception that your CLE program isn't neutral sometimes is problematic, even when it is considered neutral. That's a really good point. So you've identified your risks. I would suggest that you actually prioritize the risks. What's the biggest risk? Is the biggest risk that nobody's going to show and you're going to lose all this money? That's usually the number one risk. Then try and figure out the reasons for that risk. This goes back to what you want your CLE to accomplish. You've probably touched on this a little bit. Whatever it is that you're trying to fix, whatever you've set as an accomplishment, should probably be also down in the risks. And I'm asking you to really think about, why is that a risk? There are different kinds of risks. There are the financial risks that I talked about, but there are also reputational risks. Will this hurt our reputation if we do something that might be perceived as a political hot potato? Do we want to tread there? There's also relationship risks. And this can take a lot of different dimensions. A relationship risk might be your relationship with the bar, your relationship with other sections, your relationship with other organizations. Are we stepping on other people's toes? Or is there a gap that no one's filling? Relationships among your membership could be an issue as well. On top of this, I would ask that you might want to think about what the likelihood of these things happening. I mean, if you've been doing a CLE plan for years and years and years, you know you're not going to lose your $10,000 off of one CLE. So the likelihood would probably be very small. But if it did happen, the severity could be awful. So I'd suggest that you also consider the severity of that risk. And then think about how you might respond to that risk if it does occur. There's usually 4 alternatives on how to respond to a risk. You can mitigate a risk. You can just accept the risk. You can try and shift the risk someplace else. But in the ideal world, what you want to do is try to eliminate the risk if you can. Do you want me to go through those one more time? You can mitigate risks. You can accept risks. Shift them, or eliminate them. Those are pretty much the only 4 choices you have. All right. And that's on the second page of the worksheet, where I ask you to identify how you're going to respond to the risk. Okay, next we're going to talk about setting goals. And by goals, I mean these are different from objectives in that these are measurable things. We want to spend down our pocket of money because we're not sure we're going to be able to carry it over. Or we want to increase our pocket of money. Identify how much money you're talking about. Is it $500 or is it $5,000? We want to get 10 new members as a result of doing CLE. Or we want to stem the decline of membership in our section. If we get more people engaged, hopefully we won't lose the typical 5 members that we've been losing from year to year. We'll stay flat. And another goal, which I've already talked about, is member involvement. But when you get to the member involvement part, there's a question of identifying how you want the members to be involved. Is it actually in the CLE, or is it attending the CLE? Is it promoting the CLE? There's lots of different ways to get your members involved when you put together a CLE program. Some other questions to consider when you're looking at executing the plan is how you're going to achieve the CLE goals. And this we're going to touch on a little bit later on when we talk about partnership with the state bar or working through the member services team. You know, are you going to do this independent of other sections? Or are you going to try and work with other sections? How are you going to achieve it? A key question is who is responsible? And we run into this a lot with different groups, and that is, particularly at this time of year where there's a transition, you need to identify for your section who is the point person for your CLE plan. It needs to be a definitive individual or individuals named in your plan that's going to be accountable. And we're going to talk about accountability later on in my presentation.
You know, and I might even take that a step further and say have one person in charge of an actual CLE event. Because at this transition point in time, if there was something already in the works, it just creates complications to have other voices then come in, and decisions that have already been made then get revisited, and just takes longer to get the project accomplished then.
Okay, the next piece, and this seems obvious, you're kind of writing a job description for your CLE plan, the person who's responsible. What are they actually going to be responsible for? Are they going to just be responsible for identifying faculty and then letting the rest of the work occur somewhere else? Are they just going to be responsible for setting your CLE schedule? Say you want to do, 6 lunch CLEs over the course of the year. Is that what their responsibility is going to be? Scope is really important, and outlining it in this plan is going to be critical, because that's an issue that when you transition this plan, you might be tweaking. In fact, it probably will be the issue that you're tweaking is, wow, that was too much work. You know, you can't ask somebody to do this again next year. So what are they responsible for relates to scope. How will they work? Is this something that this is their only role in your section? Is the CLE part of it? Or is CLE tied to some other activity that you're doing with your section? Maybe they're also responsible for establishing collaborative relationships with other sections, and they're using CLE as a tool to do that. You want to specify that for them here. And then lastly, when? Is this something that you're, a one program CLE plan, or is this a series of CLE programs? Do you want to do it in the summer, spring, literally when? Okay. The last piece of executing the plan is tracking progress. This is really, really important to your section, as well as those with whom you're working at the State Bar to put together your CLE program. It establishes accountability for roles and responsibilities and activities right from the outset. I would also suggest that you track by measuring progress against the goals that you've set for your plan. So if your goal for the plan was to make $5,000 this year from CLE, come back to the plan after every one of your programs and see how, we're 70% of the way there, we're 75% of the way there. This should be a working document for you. And then lastly, outcomes. How close are you to the outcomes that you had expected for your team, or for your group, I'm sorry. And one way to find out outcomes is to conduct the surveys at the end of your CLE programs and ask the attendees if they got what you expected them to get from that program. Do they feel better about your section? Do they not? Are they more likely to renew their membership or not? That survey tool isn't just about the CLE program. You can use it as a tool to measure engagement in your section as well. Okay, the next piece is conducting an after-action review. And this is something that you can either do it now for last year if you know about what you guys did last year, or you can wait and do this last part of the plan next year as you're getting ready to transition the plan. And if you have the information about the history about what your section did last year, it would be worth it to do this for last year so that you have a more complete document to work from this year. But these are real simple questions. What worked? Why did it work? What didn't work? Why didn't it work? What do you want to keep? Maybe those luncheons weren't such a good idea. Nobody showed up. Maybe we need to switch to something else. And then, again, what to change? Do we want to change the way that we work with the State Bar? Do we want to create an actual CLE subcommittee? Maybe we don't have one. Maybe we need one. Maybe we have one and we don't need one. Consider all the different things that you might want to tweak. And then on the very last page at the bottom is planning for the future. If one of the pieces of your analysis of what worked and what you might want to change includes creating a CLE subcommittee so that you're a little bit more, structured about it, that's a next step. You need to identify it here. What other things might you want your successor to know about what you learned as you executed your plan this year? That would go in this section. And then I would strongly encourage you to actually conduct a formal transition if you're transitioning CLE from one person to another. Make it part of the end of the year responsibilities of whoever the CLE chair is for your section. Sit down with them, walk them through the plan you wrote. They may or may not have been involved, but even if they weren't involved, they don't know it as, even if they were involved in developing the plan, they weren't as intimately involved in the tracking and all that you conducted throughout the year. So sit down with them, and share your experience. And then I would suggest that you not abandon them and that you actually help them update and revise the plan for the coming year. Take a new clean worksheet and start over for the next year. Are there any questions? Yes, behind you, Barbara.
Wanted to share something that our section does. We have one particularly large CLE event that we sponsor every year. We just did our 10th annual. And we've always followed that event with a survey to all of the participants. And we found that survey very helpful in then planning the next year's program.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and I would suggest that if you do that for multiple programs, that all the surveys get gathered when you start working on your new plan. So that way you have information about all the activities, all the CLE activities you did for the whole year. It'll help you identify your risks and et cetera too. Hold on, Jeff.
For those in which Pinnacle's involved, either webinars or the AMC type stuff, do you keep a database for each of the programs that would be, the sections could go back and look at historical type stuff?
It would be, we don't necessarily, well, I guess we kind of do keep a database in IMIS. It's not a formal database, but we can, it's not difficult to get that information for you to find out how many programs, like your section
Well, I mean, we know how
has
many
done.
programs, but
In terms
we'd
of
like to
viewing it?
see the outcomes as far as the surveys that you do. And I don't know that, except for one or two, that would really, that's not a part of what happens.
Right,
So
you know
that's
what,
something we would like.
what we did is we shared that information with the CLE committee, but we didn't do the next step. You bring up a good point. Last year, we just shared it with the CLE committee and it stopped there, and what we should have done was push that out to the sections that create, that's a very good point. We'll do that. Your group did a session last year too, didn't you? I can get you last year's.
Right, but we also do a number of webinars.
Well, you're talking about AMC.
Yeah, we can make a point to share that information, Jeff.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you. I hope that you find this tool useful, and I can make it available for you electronically as well, so that way it's a resource for you going forward.